Good afternoon, and welcome to the joint meeting of HLAA. This meeting is being sponsored by both Montgomery County, Maryland chapter and the DC chapter. So we are very happy to see so many faces here. This is a wonderful medium for educating oneself on the newest technology, programs, and so on. But it's also for a wonderful place to come and meet with other people who are facing the same challenges that so many of us do face. It's a wonderful community for sharing and helping others to understand they're not alone in their journey and that there are ways that we can help each other and support each other in our journey. The success of these chapters depends on volunteers, and we are very eager to have new people join us in administering the two sites, both Montgomery and DC. If you are technically savvy, if you are good with computers, we are always looking for people who can write emails, disseminate information, do group email splurges, and so on. If you are someone who enjoys speaking, you can help us in presenting the meetings and moderating and so on. If you are good at researching topics and people for programs, we welcome that input always. We are always looking for new and interesting programs to have to put forth to our community. And if you have some financial background, there are some things that need to be taken care of, like the treasury, the so on, that kind of thing. So if you are at all moved to become involved on a volunteer level, please reach out to either chapter and someone will be in touch with you, we promise. There are steering committees for each chapter. That's basically a few people who meet and make sure that we have programs planned, that we have time set, and that we have events planned and so on. For instance, coming up, and someone may talk about this, we are planning a holiday gathering on December 7th. We had one last year in Montgomery County. It went very, very well. And we're looking forward to hopefully being able to meet each other in person and share stories together. I think other than that, we're a go, and I'm going to, at this point, turn the program over to Rachel, who is going to talk a little bit about another great event we have, which is the Walk for Hearing, which will be taking place in October. Rachel?
Hi, everyone. If you're not familiar with the Walk for Hearing, it's a really great family event. You can bring your family, you can bring your dogs, you can bring friends with you, and it's really just a celebration of supporting people with hearing loss that you might know, and even just enjoying time together with the community. So I'm going to share a link in a minute. The DC chapter is going to have their own team, and the Montgomery County chapter is also going to have a team. I will share both those links and you can sign up for either. And afterwards, we're going to go out for a bite to eat all together with both chapters. The walk will be on Sunday, October 27th. It starts around 10 a.m., but you do need to register ahead of time. So I'll be putting those links in the chat in just a minute for you. And if you have any other questions, I'll also include my email address. You can reach out to me if you have any questions about the walk. Thank you. And now I will turn it over to Russ.
Thank you, Rachel. Let me just start with a couple of other future programs, that we're planning. The 17th of November, we will have Anna Marie Killian, who's the Chief Executive Officer of TDI for Access. And they focus, that's an organization, national organization that focuses on accessibility in information systems and communications, for people with hearing loss, deafness and hearing loss. She's very good. And that'll be the 17th of November. And on the 12th of January, we're going to be hearing from the new HLAA's new Director of Public Policy. And he'll be talking basically about, the agency's priorities for policy advocacy. If you are on the mailing list for one of the two chapters sponsoring today, you'll be receiving, those notices of those meetings, as time goes on. If you're not, by all means, let's for the DC chapter. I know you can. Well, okay. We'll go into that a little bit later. Okay, my job, I guess, at this point is to introduce our speaker of today, Steve Tadai, who is the lab director at HearAdvisor, which is a leading hearing aid and sound performance lab. He holds a degree in audio engineering from Columbia College in Chicago, and a doctorate in audiology from Northern Illinois University. This gives him a unique blend of expertise, and he has a commitment, to enhancing auditory experiences for those of us with hearing loss, particularly by means of advanced hearing technologies. Dr. Tadai is also a senior contributor at hearingtracker.com, where he provides in-depth hearing aid and earplug reviews, and he serves as an adjunct faculty member at several colleges. Through his teaching, he aims to empower the next generation and inspire students to discover and pursue their own passions. I was going to say, without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Steve. One thing before we begin, I'm going to ask, that it's a fairly large group today. If you have questions in the course of Dr. Tadai's presentation, put them in the chat box. And when we get through with the formal presentation, we will go through the questions, in the chat box and hopefully get them all answered. One other thing, until you're speaking, I'd appreciate if you'd mute yourself so we don't have distractions from noise and television and all kinds of other things, around the house. So that would be very helpful. And as I say, without further ado, let me turn this over to Dr. Tadai. And thank you very much, Dr. Tadai, for doing this for us.
Thank you, Russ. And it's my pleasure. I'm happy to be here, genuinely. And nowadays, I normally work in a lab, so it's always nice to kind of get out and actually see people and interact with people. So thank you for both the introduction and opportunity to come speak. So I have some slides that I'd like to share. Mainly what I would like to go over today is some of the issues that you know better than me with regard to finding quality hearing technology, some of the issues that are out there with the way, just with how numerous technologies are OTC, standard prescription hearing aids. And then I'd like to talk a little bit about what we're doing and this issue of finding quality technologies and what we're doing to try and level the playing field and make it easier for individuals with hearing loss to find quality products. So I suppose let me jump over and share my screen. And as Russ said, please feel free to add any comments. I'll kind of be monitoring that as we go through. And if there's a question that I just completely that would make sense to address, I'll try and answer it now. Otherwise, I'm happy to stick around as long as needed and answer other questions. All right. So before I get into anything, these are kind of three major questions that I'd like to address today. And, what are over-the-counter hearing aids? That'll just be a brief explanation. I don't know if I'm sure many of you have heard of this new category since 2022, when the FDA passed this new ruling, even though we've had OTC hearing aids long before I was in the field as an audiologist. I'd like to answer this question, how do OTC compare to prescription hearing aids? And even within that, how do various prescription hearing aids compare to one another? And then I would like to speak to this final one, which is how can you or, a loved one, friend, family member find quality hearing technologies? Because as we'll kind of unwrap in these first two, is it's not always easy. Okay, so I guess a brief background about myself. Uh, get this centered again. I love everything audio, and I kind of always have. So here we have lots of pictures of things that I've done throughout my career so far. I do really enjoy working in the creative audio arts world. And as Russ mentioned, I'm an adjunct faculty at a couple different colleges where I teach like audio production, our perception of sound as that relates to audio arts and production. So you can see me here, running sound for a commercial for a local video company. I do still work in the music realm every now and then, recording bands, which is loads of fun. That was actually the kind of catalyst behind me entering the world of hearing sciences, because musicians tend to damage their ears, brag about it, at least in our society, and that led to this world of hearing conservation and really what we can do to preserve our hearing in the early years and then even as we age, so that we don't struggle as much with the hearing technologies, or maybe we don't even need the hearing technologies, hearing aids, because we've protected our hearing system. And this kind of last picture down here leads to HearAdvisor. So I'll kind of jump forward. If you want a brief history, a little bit more in-depth, but brief history of my timeline, I graduated with my doctorate back in 2017. I went to work here in Rockford, Illinois, which is kind of a neighboring city of Chicago. And I worked at a nonprofit called Center for Sight and Hearing. And I pretty much treated a very broad range of patients. Uh, I did have to see some pediatrics. That's definitely not my area of, I'd say, passion or expertise, but that's okay. Some of the work that I did there that I enjoyed most was working with veterans and doing compensation and pension evaluations. So you have people who are vets, they come in, they have hearing loss, tinnitus, and basically my job was to test their hearing, hopefully so that they could get some help from the VA to compensate them for any injury that they sustained in their time of service. So in 2018, and I worked at the clinic for quite a while, so it's not like it was only 1 year. I worked there for around 5 years. Concurrently, I was teaching at a couple different colleges: Rock Valley, Northern Illinois University, Emerson College. I mentioned that already. I started working with another audiologist named Abram Bailey, and he runs Hearing Tracker, which I'll kind of inherently mention today, and I'll talk about at the end if you're not familiar with it. And through my work with Abram, that's kind of led to this new project, which is HearAdvisor, which we'll talk about later. And as I mentioned, I also teach at Columbia College. So that's me professionally in a nutshell. So I haven't been in the hearing world, I guess, too long, 2017, and it's changed quite a bit since then. Okay. So let's talk about hearing aids, hearing technologies in general, and some of the differences between them. I like to have demonstrations, so I'm not just yakking at you the whole time. So here I have actually two different audio files. This kind of device A, device B, and I'll pull the curtain back on these at the very end. But I'd like to play these sound files, and I'd like you to feel free if you want. You can pull up annotations and you can add a stamp, which is like this. You can find that on your screen under maybe like a little pencil icon. Or feel free to just type in the meeting chat, but I'm going to play both of these and I'd like to know which one you thought sounded better. And that's a very non-specific question, so there really are no right or wrong answers here. All right, so I'll let this one play and I'll have the volume turned up. There we go.
No, I'm not listening. Looks like we're finally getting a break. I mean, it's supposed to be sunny all weekend.
Oh, yeah? Perfect timing. Maybe I can finally get out there and do some yard work.
Yard work. My mind went to breaking out the grill.
Well, that too. So long as it's going to cut itself, the bushes have gotten a little crazy.
I guess that's true. I mean, I've been putting off staining the deck, but this year, maybe the year.
Trees, bushes, yeah. We'll just have to worry about the grill and the huge ice cream cooler.
Okay, that was device A. Let me switch over here.
Did you hear the news last night?
No, I must have missed it.
Looks like we're finally getting a break. I mean, it's supposed to be sunny all weekend.
Oh, yeah? Perfect timing. Maybe I can finally get out there and do some yard work.
Yard work. My mind went to breaking out the grill.
Well, that too. The lawn isn't going to cut itself, and the bushes have gotten a little crazy.
I guess that's true. I mean, I've been putting off staining the deck, but this year, maybe the year.
Trees, bushes, deck. We'll just have to worry about the grill and the huge ice cream cooler.
Okay, so if you feel like sharing, can feel free to comment in the meeting chat whether you liked A or B, and or if you want to get a little bit more interactive, feel free to stamp which one you preferred. And there's no real right or wrong answer here. It's a very subjective question, but I think it leads to a lot of the confusion that we end up addressing with hearing technologies. Okay, so quite a few people saying device B. Some people liked A. Device A is a negative, is a D. Device B is a C. Okay, interesting. Could not hear A. All right. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for commenting. Feel free to keep adding your comments, and just remember that whether you liked A or B, because again, I'll come back to that at the very end of this. All right. So I don't mean for this slide to be pandering or seem obvious, because it is a big challenge that a lot of people in our society face to understand this concept that, finding hearing help is difficult. And while making some of these slides, and this one specifically, I kind of chuckled because I was going to do what I typically do and start defining how it's difficult for people to find hearing help. It's like, you all know that far better than I do. So three points at least that I've really see as it pertains to HearAdvisor, because we're not covering everything, but three common ones are, there are so many devices out there in the market right now. You can go to big box consumer retailers like Best Buy, Walmart. You can find numerous OTC devices, over-the-counter devices. You can go to 5 different clinics, hearing clinics in your area, and they will likely all sell slightly different hearing aids. So another major point here is, of course, cost varies significantly. Hearing aids, I think the average price per hearing aid nowadays is somewhere around like $2,400. And then you can find over-the-counter hearing aids that are around $100, some even less than $100 per pair. A third point that compounds, I think, making these first two that much more difficult is all companies, whether it's $100 OTC device or that multi-$1,000 prescription hearing aid being fit by a provider, they pretty much all have these same or very similar marketing claims. So those are kind of 3 points that we'll talk about in the next few slides. But before I do that, let me see. Here. That's fine. Okay, so if you're not familiar, I wanted to talk about at least the different categories that we have of hearing aids right now. In 2022, the Food and Drug Administration passed this new category for over-the-counter hearing aids. Now, we've had over-the-counter hearing aids for a very long time, but this was like an official category. Now it's at least regulated to some extent. So on the top here, this first bucket is prescription hearing aids. These are what we're all familiar with. You go to a provider, you're diagnosed with a hearing loss. They fit you with a medically researched device. The new category, over the counter. This started in 2022 officially. And even within this, there are multiple categories. And this gets very confusing very quickly. And that comes from someone who pretty much does nothing but researches hearing aids. But two major categories would be preset based. And these are devices that might have just kind of pre-programmed presets that you can switch between. And then some over-the-counter hearing aids, you can actually perform like an on-ear hearing test through them, like through your app. And then it is supposed to provide volume, gain, or amplification, whichever one of those words you want to use, based on your hearing loss. It's supposed to, the whole goal behind this over-the-counter hearing aid category, by the way, was to help people get quality devices. And this is specific to those with a perceived mild to moderate hearing loss, by the way. So they're not designed for everyone, but the goal is for these over-the-counter devices, at least as the FDA is considered, they're supposed to be able to provide a similar benefit as prescription hearing aids. Okay, now the last bucket I like to think of are amplification products. And these are technically not hearing aids. They're not designed to treat hearing loss. And they're called PSAPs awfully, personal sound amplification products. Now, these are kind of pocket talkers. Many times they're advertised as hearing aids, even though they're not supposed to be, but they're designed for like bird watching or hunting. Make it easier for you to hear environmental sounds. Really, that's what's behind PSAPs. Okay, here are just some images of devices from each one of those categories. You know, a very common prescription hearing aid that was just released within the past few months is this, Phonak is the company, Infiniosphere is the model of the device. An OTC, this is Lucid Tala, so it's more like an earbud, though they really do vary. And then PSAPs, similarly, they vary. They can look like a hearing aid. They can be more like your mobile device, where they have a pair of headset, like earbuds that you wear. They vary considerably. My screen keeps jumbling. There we go. So this will lead into this wonderful soup of confusion that we end up having with hearing technologies. Sennheiser, which is a pro audio company, like they make recording gear and live sound gear, as well as like headphones for consumers. But they now more recently entered this hearing market. So here we see these devices in this gentleman's ear. They're called Conversation Clear Plus. You can see that they're really still quite expensive on sale. They're still around $700. And so the question is, okay, are these over-the-counter hearing aids? Is it a PSAP? And the answer to that question is it's kind of a trick question, because it's neither of them. They're actually just advanced earbuds like Apple AirPods Pro. Again, this is showing just how confusing this area is. They're not, as far as the FDA is concerned, they are not regulated or categorized as a hearing aid yet. Their name and their advertising is all suggesting that they're designed to make speech clear. Okay, I'm kind of wrapping up this intro to HearAdvisor, but this graphic that we see on the right-hand side, this comes from Hearing Tracker. And Hearing Tracker, if you're not familiar with it, it is a website, to put it simply, it's a website where you can find pretty much every information about every category of the hearing world you would like. They have product reviews, they have videos, they have information about just changes in like the legal side of hearing aids. So for example, when a new category comes about with FDA, or when Apple releases a new product that has FDA approval. You know, they always have fantastic, unbiased information about those changes. So it is really a wonderful resource for anyone, consumer, individual with hearing loss, family member, even a provider like myself. It's great. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is this is kind of a roadmap for all of the companies and then the technologies in the industry right now. And that, well, this is actually a little outdated. This is 2023. But you can see we have Starkey, WSA Audiology, Demant, Intercom, Amplifone, Sonova, Lucid. And those are really the major big players that end up owning all of these other brands that you are likely more familiar with. And I have a link to this down here, and I'm happy to share these slides for anyone who would be interested. Russ, I can just send it to you in an email if anyone wants to access these links. But just to show you, like WSA Audiology, they own both Widex and Signia, and those are often thought of as like different hearing aid companies, but they have the same, you know, parent company of WSA Audiology. Demant is like Oticon. Sonova is Phonak. Okay, Nancy. Yeah, I'm more than happy to share these slides. The links will be active in them. And then you can like blow them up as well and take a look. But this is like exhausting to me as a provider to look at this this PDF really and see all of these different companies. And then down here we have some of the new over-the-counter companies that have entered the market. All right, so I'm kind of building here to a switch over. But I just wanted to show you, this is a Walmart OTC hearing aid display, and they have what, 6 devices right here. So if you or a family member are looking for some help with hearing aids, you might go to Walmart and see that they have this new offering of over-the-counter hearing aids. Great. This one, this Atom Pro, by the way, ranges for around $200. The one on the other side, Jabra, GN, some of their products are around $2,000, over $2,000. So an order of magnitude different in price. You can't try them on. You can't listen to them. There's really little information about them. So maybe you go to their website, right? Maybe you go to walmart.com. And we did this around a year ago. We went to walmart.com and we purchased 24 of the best selling over-the-counter hearing aids. And here you can see a grouping of all of them on my table after I was done testing them. And these were kind of air quotes best selling. So I don't know if that means based on the ones that are sold the most through Walmart with the least returns, the ones that are sold the most and have the best ratings. But if you were to filter the best devices, these are the 24 top ones. Okay. There are actually, I looked earlier this week, there are currently 62 hearing aids sold on Walmart.com. These are just a small subset of the quote unquote best sellers. So this leads to this kind of my hand drop, you know, brush my hand through my hair concept of I genuinely am confused when I see things like this. And I honestly can't imagine how confused someone with hearing loss or a family member of someone with hearing loss might be, because you don't have the insider, you likely don't have the insider knowledge of, you know, what hearing loss is, how it's treated, the research behind these technologies, what companies are behind all of these companies like this graphic. So, okay, so stick with me a little bit more. I just want to add a few more concepts here. I had mentioned that prices vary considerably. There are lots of companies. So Tony asked, how do you know which OTCs are best sellers? So for this example with Walmart, what I did is I just went to their hearing aid section. And you know how like on Amazon, you can filter by price, you can filter by style, things like that, color. I just filtered by best sellers. So that's all I did. I Walmart.com, typed in the search bar, hearing aids, and then went to the filter for best sellers. and they spat out these 24 devices. 24. So these are 3 different advertisements for hearing aids. Earcentric, which is for around $200. Phonex Sphere, which are around 2,500 each. Eargo 6, which is an OTC device. Both of these are over the counter. Eargo 6 is around $3,000 a pair. And I just went to their website and I pulled these 3 advertisements, and feel free to read them if you want, but I already highlighted in yellow what's behind a lot of these companies. And it doesn't take much research to realize that people want help hearing speech clearly. And then they certainly want help with background noise. And companies know this very well. And that's why I showed this here, to highlight that all 3 of these companies, even though the price ranges from $200 to around $5,000, this one you'd get assistance from a provider, but they all say they have some form of noise cancellation, and they all let you hear speech clear. So again, if you're shopping for hearing aids, how can you tell the difference? You can't just assume. I mean, you maybe can assume that as price goes down, quality goes down, but the marketing claims are exactly the same. So maybe you turn to online reviews. So I took a look at that as well. So I went to the National Council on Aging, NCOA, Forbes Health, and there are plenty of others. You know, their Hearing Tracker is certainly one of them. Top10.com is another one I've looked at before. And you can get these pages that rate the quality of OTC devices. So you can see on this case, Jabra GN is one, both rated at the top. NCOA rated Audien Hearing, this one company. It also shows up here on Forbes Health. So remember that one if you can, this Audien Hearing that's showing up on top 5 for both of these. MD Hearing also shows up on a top 3. So remember both of those, and I'll show you our data later on about Audien Hearing and MD Hearing. Okay, so quick overview of some of the challenges. And again, you likely know these firsthand far better than I do. I do have a family member or several family members with hearing loss, but it's always different when it's your ears. So nowadays, there are far too many choices. You can call this choice overload. We commonly see this called the Wild West of OTC because this is all new. Like we just recently have this announcement from the FDA about OTC products and now being categorized with some level of, FDA regulation. But really, if we look to providers for help, I would say that a big concern is, do they have experience? Most audiologists, they do not have any experience with over-the-counter devices because they're not designed to be used by providers. And they're also not, audiology students are generally not taught about OTC in school. At least I certainly wasn't. So another consideration is, and we all know this, audiologists, they do make money through the sales of hearing aids. So how is that going to influence their willingness to discuss over-the-counter hearing aids with you if they know they're not going to make any money selling you an OTC device because you're purchasing it, but they will make money selling this other product that they're more familiar with? Lisa asked a question. Will this whole presentation be about OTC hearing aids? No, it will not. It's just kind of a common topic, and you can extrapolate a lot of what I'm saying to prescription hearing aids as well. The price varies considerably. There are 5 major companies. How do you know which one of those prescription hearing aids is going to be best for you? But that's a good question. Thanks for bringing that up, Lisa. So for websites, I can kind of speed through this and get to some of the fun information. Website reviews, many of them, they use affiliate links. So basically they make money when you click on their website. They make money when you click on certain links. So for example, up here, NCOA, Forbes Health, maybe they make more money when you click on audio and hearing than when you click on eargo links. So maybe they have an incentive to push audio and hearing a little bit higher because they make more money when you, again, when you purchase it through their website. So um, to make a long story short, even though I've made it long, it's very difficult, I think, to find quality, helpful information. And a lot of people end up turning, I think, towards user reviews, which are not objective. Many of them are fake for what it's worth as well. So this was this question we ended up asking: how can the average person make good decisions when purchasing hearing aids? Prescription, over the counter, it doesn't matter. All hearing device. You're diagnosed with hearing loss. You want help. There's a lot of money. There's a lot of benefit in finding a quality device. How can you do it? So the three of us had this question, and Abram Bailey, he is the over here. He is the founder of Hearing Tracker, and he's been running that for pretty much since he graduated for quite some time ago. Andy Sabin, he's a PhD. He's a hearing scientist, and he works for Bose. Andy Abrams, an audiologist. So the three of us kind of had this question. You know, we see all these issues. There are lots of devices. Price ranges considerably. Advertisements are the same. The research is generally extremely biased around these products as well, because the companies may run that research or fund the research through universities. So it might not be the best methodology. So we set out to create what was ultimately called HearAdvisor. And the three concepts that we wanted to address, we wanted to be independent and transparent, meaning we wanted to be able to provide information that wasn't biased. We didn't want affiliate links. We didn't want them to be, paid for advertisements like you'll find across the internet. We really wanted it to be scientific and evidence-based. You can have two people listen to music and two people have vastly different preferences on what sounds good and what doesn't sound good. But when we're talking about like communication and speech clarity, there are very clear signs that we can measure for better speech intelligibility, as it's called, or worse speech intelligibility. So we wanted it to be objective, founded in science, not just someone like me listening to me without hearing loss, listening to two devices and saying, oh, this one sounds better to me. And you will also see that a lot online right now. Last but certainly not least, we wanted it to be realistic. We didn't want to have our data not correspond to what you might see or hear in the real world. And tied in with this realistic, it had to be obviously understandable and digestible to the average person, where you don't need an advanced degree or knowledge of scientific methods to be able to interpret our results. So this was our goal. Basically, it has to be accurate, meaning independent, not biased. Had to be equal in comparison, so scientific, and then it had to be meaningful, where it actually can be used by those who we're trying to help. Okay, so this was several years ago at this point. We officially launched HearAdvisor, that is, in 2022, but we set out to build our lab, and this is actually within my house where I'm sitting right now. We had this, I have this empty basement, and I just started building this sound chamber. You can think of it that way, or a sound booth. And you can see here the stages of, insulating the walls a little bit, actually building the walls, using some acoustic treatment to try and reduce the effects the room might have. And down here on the bottom right, you can see kind of the final product coming to be. And after many months of work, this is where we're at right now. So this is our lab, and we have this this mannequin. It's an industry standard acoustic mannequin for hearing aid research. The technical name is Kimar, but we call him the Fonz, just from the the hairdo that he has, and it ties in also with this graph on the shirt. With, if there are any engineers here, you'll recognize that as the equal loudness contours. But this lab is where we make hearing aid recordings. So we have all of these speakers that you see around our mannequin, and we're able to present realistic sound scenes with various talkers, one-person conversations, two-person conversation, and three-person conversations to our mannequin here. And we're able to make recordings then from inside our mannequin's ears, and that emulates what you would hear. So for example, we can play back, they're called ambisonic recordings, which is just an audio format, but we can play back cafe scenes from these 8 speakers. And then maybe we play back 2 people speaking from maybe this speaker over here and this speaker right here. And then our mannequin sitting in the middle, it's as though he is sitting in a cafe listening to these 2 people speaking to him. And then we can put on, hearing aid A, hearing aid B, hearing aid C. We can make recordings of those devices and then ultimately analyze them. And that's what we're doing. So we take our industry standard mannequin that emulates what a human hears. We present realistic sound scenes. And then on the next slide, I'll talk a little bit more about this, but we analyze them in different ways. And we actually got feedback from the hearing loss community using Hearing Tracker to make sure that our metrics were meaningful in terms of what you may be interested in. And then also, how you would rate the importance of things. Is speech intelligence more important, or is music streaming, for example, more important? And we're able to compare those. Okay, so I know it gets very technical. So I don't want to just glaze over the technical side of things. So feel free, if you want more information, you can even type it in the meeting chat, and maybe I'll dive a little bit deeper if needed. But in a nutshell, what we're doing is we are creating 72 realistic audio recordings, and that's across 12 different environments, like a cafe, an office, a church, a city street, a restaurant, a dinner party. So these are real world situations that the average person would experience. We do multi-talker situations, as I already mentioned, 1, 2, and 3 people speaking. Again, common conversational settings. And this is a big part. We use 2 fitting approaches. There's what's called our initial fit, and you can think of this as like an out of the box. So you get a hearing aid, your audiologist just programs it based on what the manufacturer's software says is right for you. And then they send you out the door. And we also do a tuned fitting where we follow best practices with probe tube measurements. So just so that I'm not yakking at you the whole time, let me stop sharing for a moment. When I say like probe tube measurements, does that mean anything? Okay. So what providers should be doing is when you get a pair of hearing aids, they should take measurements inside your ear canal. Yeah, so Barbara has it. Real ear measurements, REM, it's often called REM. If you've heard of Dr. Cliff Olson, he's always talking about this concept. So everyone's ears are different. I mean, we can see there's 30 of us here. Every single one of us has a different face, right? Our hair is different, our eyes are different, our nose, our ears are different as well. So what real ear measurements allow us to do is we put little microphones down in your ear canal. We can measure all of those differences and then make sure that the hearing aid is actually giving you an appropriate amount of volume based on your hearing loss and your individual needs. It is a tremendously important part of good hearing aid fittings. And unfortunately, only around 20 to 30% of providers do this routinely. It's for lack of better words, it's rather disgusting that as a field of providers, we're not doing the best that we can. Yeah, so Lisa had a great question. Do we program the FONs with different configurations of hearing losses? Right now, we're focusing on one common age-related hearing loss, and it's a mild to moderate sloping hearing loss, which is why we chose it. So it's right between these two grounds of OTC devices being for people with a perceived mild to moderate hearing loss, and then prescription hearing aids can obviously be fit for a full range of hearing losses. So we're right between the two at kind of the limits of what OTC devices should be designed to help with. So we're using one hearing loss, and that's just because we have a bottleneck of me. I'm the only one who does the testing. So if we were to open it up to say 3 or 4 hearing losses, we would basically only be able to test a few devices a year. Okay, so to bring it back to what I had mentioned here, we have our initial fit, and this is what most people experience going to your provider. They program your hearing aids just based on what the manufacturer, the company says is right, and they send you out the door. We also take a look at how those hearing aids, when we perform real ear measurements, basically, there's a microphone down inside Kemar's ears. So we're able to hear what Kemar hears, and we tune it or adjust the settings of the hearing aid to best match what science would say is needed for that mild to moderate age-related hearing loss. Okay, so we have these 72 recordings, and then we take a look at these 5 different categories. You know, how do they help with speech and quiet? How do they help with speech and loud noise? Is there lots of feedback? When you wear them, do they sound really boomy? You know, does it sound like you're in a barrel? And if they offer audio streaming, like for phone calls, music, podcasts, what's the quality of that audio streaming? Okay, so just to maybe illustrate the differences between real ear measurements and the impact they can have. This light purple line that I'm tracing right here, we don't need to get into the crazy science of this, but that green line that I just drew, that shows what science would indicate is best for our hearing loss to make speech clear. So green is good. You can think of it like that. Green is good. This purple line that we see right here, this is the manufacturer's first fit for a common prescription hearing aid. So you can see that we're below the green line almost everywhere. And what that means for you as an individual being fit with this hearing aid is there's a lot of benefit being left on the table. You're not getting everything that you could get from this prescription hearing aid, which if you're spending thousands of dollars, is not right, for lack of a better word. Okay, so once I perform real ear measurements, I'm going to hit play and watch how this purple line that's out of the box, what the manufacturer recommends. I'm going to hit play and watch how this purple line changes. And this is what I do when I perform real ear measurements. And if your audiologist performs real ear measurements, that's the difference you should see. Well, now the gain of the hearing aid, which is what we're looking at here, should match what science says is needed based on your hearing loss. So that's the difference between, you know, out of the box. Sometimes it's good, but maybe it's not. This is a case where it's not. And what your provider should be doing is performing probe tube measurements, real ear measurements to optimize the amplification for your needs. So this is what we look at out of the box. And we also program it following best practices. We make those same recordings and we measure it here. Okay. So I'm going to open HearAdvisor in just a moment, but I wanted to mention what we're ultimately able to provide them is we can show you based on science the audio performance of different hearing aids, prescription hearing aids, over-the-counter hearing aids, even when a company releases a new product, we likely have data from the previous generation, and then you can compare it to the new generation. We do provide sound files, which is like what you heard early on. And then we try and, to get to the meaningful concept, we always try and provide meaningful information that you can actually understand. So let me go back here for just one moment. Barbara asked, does the purple line mean you're being overtreated? It means you're being undertreated. And thank you, Barbara, for that question. So you could think green would, if I may draw this again, that light purple line is good. That's your prescription. So think that's a common word for it. That's what science says you need based on your hearing loss. And it varies for every hearing loss. This is just based on the one that we use that is a common age-related hearing loss. So if we were to plug your hearing aids, measure in your ears, turn them on, measure the volume, and you got that green line right there, it would be good. We'd be very happy. This purple line, there's a lot of benefit that we're not giving you because it's not as loud as it could be to make up for your hearing loss. Now to Barbara's question, overtreated would be if the line looked like this and it were over the prescription. And that's something we see very often as well with like OTC devices. That's a great question. Thank you for asking that. I don't think I addressed that. So, I mean, Vise asked a few questions about, do we only work with OTC? No, we've tested around, it's over 70 prescription, over-the-counter, advanced earbuds, pretty much every device that we can get our hands on. We're testing it right now. And we're only doing it for this mild to moderate hearing loss because, as I said, it would exponentially make things more difficult for us. Like I'm the only one who's doing testing basically, so it would make it where we don't have enough time to test all products. So let me pull up HearAdvisor.com, and I just wanted to show you some of the slides on there and how you might be able to use this for yourself or a family member. And maybe it'll make more sense than me just kind of yakking about what we're doing. Okay. So it's just HearAdvisor.com. And I wanted to point out there are no affiliate links on here. So no matter on what you click, like we're not making money off of anything directly through this website or you visiting it. Get out of the way so I can actually see what's going on. So for hearing aids here, we offer awards to the top performing products. So to really simplify this process, because there's lots of devices, there's lots of data. We actually spoke with around 100 individuals with hearing loss and around 100 providers and asked, okay, across these 5 metrics, how would you rate their importance? And then we take this out of the box, this tune fitting, we basically funnel it down to this one number, which is our sound grade. And then all devices that get an A, they end up getting this expert choice award. So it really shows you, I guess from the easiest possible standpoint, which devices perform the best. But you can go to our leaderboard, which gives you all devices like OTC. We do have a prescription leaderboard, so it's just prescription hearing aids. And you can you can see like what year was it released, cost, prescription, sound grade is just a like typical grading scale. And if you're interested in devices, we have some drop-down bars here. So if you want something that's only, behind the ear, you can take a look at that. But you can also then click on a product. So like this one right here, Phonak Audiosphere Infinio, was a recent release. We tested it and it ended up being one of the best devices or the best device we've tested to date. And then you can get some information about its overall performance in the out of the box. Once we performed verifications, you want to learn more on Hearing Tracker, you can do that. But here we have a breakdown of all those scores. How did it perform in speech and quiet, speech and noise, with feedback? Did it sound boomy when we were testing it? And then audio streaming. And I know someone just asked that in the chat. You know, Judy asked, how does Bluetooth capability factor into your assessment? Well, we're only testing sound quality. So if a device offers Bluetooth streaming, that is one of the measurements we take. And then here's that graph that I actually just showed you on the slide. So you can see, all right, most providers do not perform real ear measurements. So if I get this device at my provider and they don't perform real ear measurements, what's the gain look like? What's the audio performance for that gain? If I do have real ear measurements performed, what's the gain look like? And again, how does the performance increase? And you can see here from manufacturer recommendations how low those scores are, to once it's been professionally tuned, you see that it's basically at the top of the range. Now, this isn't going to apply for everyone or work for everyone, but we do also offer sound files so you can listen to what it sounds like in quiet, how it sounds in noise. And then even for streamed music, you can get a sense of how it sounds too. For the musicians, the people who are really interested in that as a feature, you can just click play. And this one shows you the raw original music file. And then you can hear it across our initial and tuned fits. You can see similar devices too. So, you know, as I mentioned, our goal here is just to provide meaningful, objective information. And this is fairly new. We've only been doing this since 2022. And we actually just relaunched our new website to be that much more, hopefully, useful to all of you. Let me go back here. So a great question was asked, you know, how is the website funded? We do, and you can learn about this if you go to like how we measure private lab evaluations. We do a lot of private lab evaluations, and this is a cool concept. Cool concept doesn't describe it well. I'm not able to find the words I like, but you know, companies who are designing hearing aids over the counter devices, they're able to have us test their product, and then we compare it to other devices that we have tested, and then we're able to offer them recommendations on what they could do to make their device better. So that's one of the major ways that we make money. It's doing these private lab evaluations for devices before they even make it to the market, which hopefully what we're doing then is we're just raising the bar so that the quality of products that you as an individual hearing loss might see, that the bar is actually raised a little bit. And I have some slides that will show you, you know, the bad actors, basically the devices that really do need help. For the products that do perform best and they get a sound grade of A, they end up winning our Expert Choice Award. And if companies want to advertise that on their website, there's a licensing fee. But we have the badge on our website. Hearingtracker.com has the badge. So it's just if that company wants to show it on their website, there's a licensing fee for that. And so far, we've been able to continue doing what we're doing off of these private evaluations and through the licensing of badges. So we've been kind of lucky so far. All right, I just had a few more points, and I guess I'm happy to answer any questions and just, I guess, chat about hearing aids in general. So if you needed more like, well, is this really needed? Let's go back to those early slides I mentioned. If you remember this, this is from the National Council on Aging. This is their like top 10 best hearing aids in 2024. Number 2 was Audi and Hearing. It's like $200-300. Number 3 on their list, the top 3 was MD Hearing. And these range in price, I think, for a couple $100 to maybe like 600. I don't know. It's been a while since I've been on the website. So here on the right-hand side, we see measurements, and I know this is very scientific, and you might not really have seen these before. That's okay. This black line I'm drawing right here, that's like the green line I drew before. So that's good. Let me just draw it in green. This is what we would want to see. We would want to see the gain of a hearing aid that we measure line up with that green line. So this purple line, hang on, let me go back. We have one purple line that's right here that I kind of already traced over. That's one of the prescription hearing aids out of the box. So it's not too bad. That company does a good job at fitting their device off the cuff with good recommendations. There's another darker purple line that I'm tracing over right now in red. This is what that device looks like once I performed real ear measurements. So excellent. But what that leaves are these two lines, this green one and this blue one here. And I forgot which one of you mentioned it before, but this is the exact opposite of overfitting. This is underfitting. So what we want would be any line to measure up with this big dark green line I drew. And we see these two over-the-counter hearing aids that are rated as number 2 and number 3 by the National Council on Aging. And these devices were also on the top of Forbes Health as being some of the best OTC devices you can get. You can see that they're significantly under this line. And what that also means is they're not providing you benefit. You might spend $300 and get a hearing aid that's providing little to no speech benefits. To put it another way, I'm going to draw a vertical line here. This line right here, that corresponds to the region that's most important for speech understanding. Like that's where speech clarity comes from right there. This 3000 hertz as it's called. So prescription device hits it very well. Excellent. Speech is going to be clear. Both OTC devices, they're providing almost no amplification where speech intelligibility comes from. So it's a big concern because, again, to the original points I mentioned, can you trust online reviews? Not really. Not always. I don't mean to sound negative. Like there are good reviews online, but then there are also ones like this where they haven't tested the devices objectively and they just listen to them, or maybe they get affiliate links. So we're also testing earplugs because it's very similar as hearing aids where marketing claims are kind of out the window. So just for what it's worth, this is an advertisement right here from producerhive.com, which is a very reputable website for musicians, for DJs, and they recommend this Erasers Hi-Fi earplug. And similarly, when I tested it, what we would expect to see would be a flat line. It's different for earplugs and hearing aids, but we would expect to see more of a flat line like this. And unfortunately, what we see is this yellow line right here, which means the earplug's offering very little actual protection from loud sounds. So again, it just points to there needs to be better reviews online for you to help protect you from, purchasing products that aren't really in your favor. Okay, so what are the next steps? What we're doing? We're still testing devices. I have Abram and Andy are constantly reminding me we have a laundry list of probably around 10 devices that we need to test right now. We're trying to not just make people such as yourselves more aware of what we're doing, but we like feedback on how we can make this more meaningful to you. There are many different ways to test hearing aids, so we're always trying to improve what we're doing to make it more accurate, so it helps you more. And then lastly, like as we've tested with new earplugs now, that's something we just did this summer. You know, we're always trying to expand and test new things. So we're regularly thinking of maybe testing sound bars, for example, because we know that's an area where a lot of people struggle as well. I was recently at the Academy of Doctors of Audiology at a conference talking about what we're doing to just inform people, help us learn, get feedback. So we're really trying to, again, like speak with people such as yourselves for HLAA, just to help people that we can also get help. I just wanted to mention, like, there are many useful online resources. So this isn't like just a pitch for HearAdvisor. You know, Tuned Care offers remote telehealth services, and they do not like the audiologists that work with them, they don't make money when they sell hearing aids. I already mentioned Hearing Tracker. It's really kind of the pinnacle of all information you could ever want about hearing aids. They have community resources as well, like forums where you can hear from other people. And then I see some questions coming in that I want to address in a moment. But this concept of real ear measurements, how do you know if your doctor or your instrument dispenser is performing real ear measurements? Well, Dr. Cliff Olson, who is a very reputable audiologist, consumer advocate, he made this website called Hearing Up, where you can go and find providers who have kind of passed his test, and they perform real ear measurements. They follow best practices. If you want to learn more about the science of what we're doing, one, I'm happy to talk to you about it because I love what I'm doing and what we're doing. But we do have a white paper. And again, when I share the PDF with all of you, you can click on this link if you'd like. That goes into the science of what we're doing. And I just wanted to show you, these were those two devices that we listened to in the very beginning. The Audient Hearing, which is around $200. That's what NCOA recommended as number 2. That's what Forbes Health recommended, I think, is 4th. And then the other device we listened to, which you've actually seen quite a bit today, that it provides very good, useful gain, is this Phonak Infinio Sphere. So just to highlight that, you know, there's a big difference between these products. I mean, there's also a big price difference, but along with that, there is a big difference in performance. And that's what I have. So I could talk about HearAdvisor and hearing aids all day, but I'll stop there. And let me take a look at some of these questions. Yeah, so Barbara asked a great question. How does the fact that some of these have ear molds and others have, like BTE, have domes? Domes are like little rubber tips. I normally have them all around my house. We test devices that sit behind the ear if possible. Some products are only designed to be in the ear. For those, it will provide some benefits. There are trade-offs. I can explain it like this. If you plug up the ear with like an ear mold, music is going to sound good. Your voice it tends to sound worse. You might get more benefits with speech and noise. Like it might be easier for you to hear speech in complex environments. As you open up the ear with like a dome, it's going to be more comfortable. Music quality goes out the window. So there are just trade-offs, and that's something that you'd have to discuss with your provider on what's most important to you and what's that middle ground between providing enough plugging to give you good speech benefits, no feedback, which is another trade-off. Barbara, did I answer your question?
Yes, I'm just trying molds and finding what you're talking about. Music is not that interesting to me. And I think I'm going to go back to domes. But I have a 50-year-old son who swears by his molds, and he pushed me in my 80s to try them.
For what it's worth, what research supports from speech understanding is having a custom fit mold will give you the most benefit. And there's a couple reasons for that. One, it's designed specifically for your ear. So every time you plug it in your ear, it's going to fit the same way. And that allows the audiologist to provide more volume before you get feedback, whistling. It can help make my music sound quality better. It tends to sit a little bit deeper in your ear. So there are many benefits to doing a ear mold, but they're definitely, they're not for everyone.
I just don't find there's any difference in speech comprehension.
Well, maybe that's a situation then where your provider can make adjustments, because the more you plug up the ear, the more benefit you should get from the hearing aid with like speech and noise benefits. Hearing aids, they have directional microphones that try and find who's important. They reduce background noise. So the more you plug up the ear, the more benefit you should get from those features. So it could be maybe the hearing aid needs to be adjusted a little bit for you. Our hearing does change over time. So maybe it's something where you need to have a new hearing test, have it reprogrammed, and then you'd notice a bigger difference. There are lots of things your provider could do to hopefully help you out.
Okay, so I should think about the molds more.
Yeah, and I would. Again, they're not for everyone. Like my father, he wears hearing aids and he does not like ear molds. A large part of that comes from his hearing loss, though. Molds are a little bit different because he's a construction worker. He did home renovation for most of his life. So his hearing is very good, very good. And then it drops off because of all that noise exposure. So for him, when you plug up the ears, his voice just sounds really boxy. So trade-offs.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Let me see who's next here. Richard asked, I want to back up OTC set in case something happened to my ARC set. How should I proceed? So, this is the difficult part. It's difficult to offer a recommendation because I don't know what your hearing loss is. If you fall within a mild to moderate case, mild to moderate severity, there are many OTC devices that actually do a fairly good job of providing that gain. If you want an easy answer, so Apple has Apple AirPods Pro. They're, I think, $200 now. And Apple just released a new update where you can take a hearing test directly through your AirPods Pro from your phone. And this is nothing new, by the way. This has been around for years, but they've updated it now where it can more accurately make adjustments for your hearing loss through Apple AirPods Pro. So if you want a really cheap, easy solution, it would be difficult for me not to recommend you trying that out first. And that's me saying, like, without knowing anything about your hearing loss. It is still an OTC device, but you could still then use that for like streaming phone calls to your ears to help with that. But otherwise, Richard, I guess I could, it's where it would help to see your hearing loss, and then I could offer more recommendations there.
Thank you.
Of course. Nancy commented about hearing tracker, Phonak Sphere to Oticon Intent for speech. Speech is more important for you, but you sacrifice music quality. That's a great question. So if I'm understanding this right, you're basically asking, like, should I have two sets of devices? One for speech intelligibility, and then another one for music quality. I guess another question I have for you, when you're talking about music quality, are you talking about, concerts, as you mentioned, do you play music yourself?
I used to, but I
Okay.
don't. I don't anymore. And I'd like to be able to go to concerts and theater with friends. And I'd like to be able to stream music. I the hearing aids I have right now, I mean, I can hear music, but some music sounds just flat and soundless to me. I've got Signia. I
Okay.
think it's Signia Pure. So would it make sense? Is it a reasonable investment? I don't know if I want to do two separate prescription hearing aids, but does it make sense to have a supplemental OTC hearing aid that is designed to help me hear music better? But then can I program it to my particular loss?
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a great question. And I've actually heard that before. So if you just won the lottery, yeah, sure. If you have all the money in the world and you want to buy two prescription hearing aids, you have one for speech, one for music, that's fine. I would never really recommend that though, because any hearing aid, but there are five major hearing aid manufacturers, right? The differences between those five manufacturers, when you perform real ear measurements, they're very small.
Oh,
So what I would more so recommend for you, Nancy, is this is a case where maybe having custom ear molds would really help you
I
because that
do.
will, you do. Excellent. Okay. Do you
Um,
know, did your provider perform real ear measurements for you?
I made her
Good for
because
you.
because of the she might not have, but because of the education actually that I got in HLAA and various reading I do, I realized that over 20 years of hearing loss, maybe 5 pairs of hearing aids, I've never had a real ear measurement until I made the audiologist do it. And I'm not sure she adjusted the sound. I'm not sure it had any effect, honestly.
Okay.
Very short, easy thing to do, but most don't do it.
Yeah, I wish there was a way we could just, I've been hearing this as an issue since I was a student. So it's been going on for a very long time. And all the research shows it makes your lives better. Individuals with hearing loss, they hear much better. They're subjectively, your general preferences tend to increase with real ear measurements. Your ability to hear speech and background noise goes up. But Nancy, what I'll say is you can actually have custom programs made for music, because what's good for music is not what's good for speech.
Right.
So if you can have your provider give you a separate music program that you can use when you're at a concert, and concerts are tend to be very, very loud. So I generally wouldn't even recommend wearing hearing aids for concerts, but you can program hearing aids in certain ways for music sound quality. And that's almost the opposite of what you need when you're programming them for speech.
Well, I know Widex has a music setting, but my Signia, made by the same company, does not.
Well,
So, or at least I've had several pairs. I've had at least 2 or 3 pairs of Signias, and they've never had. Is there something I'm missing? Are they,
yeah.
passing it for me, or what? How?
So it's in there. There's actually not many or most, all hearing aid companies now, they have automatic program switching. So the hearing aids are listening to your environment and they're actually switching the settings based on what they detect. So I imagine your hearing aid would be set where it automatically goes to music, but I would recommend that you have your provider give you a manual music program, and that actually is adjusted for you. So what I would do in clinic, for example, is if I had a guitarist, I would have them bring their guitar in and play, and I would make adjustments to their hearing aids. Some examples would be turning off feedback reduction, increasing the amount of bass, reducing the amount of compression the hearing aid was doing. Different things like that will make music sound much better. And you just have a dedicated program for that. That way, when you're listening to music, you can just switch the settings and you'll get much better sound quality.
Thank you for spending time with me. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Can I just jump in there? I've been listening. I'm a musician, so this really interests me. I have Phonak prescription hearing aid, cochlear implant on my right. I do have a music setting on my Phonak, and it's next door to useless. It does very little.
Uh,
And I've heard that from other people who have hearing aids with a music setting.
This kind of falls into the same bucket as like real ear measurements. You know, you have providers who specialize in pediatric fittings. You have audiologists who specialize in like cochlear implant fittings. There are actually audiologists who specialize in music. And it's almost like you need someone who knows how to adjust the hearing aid to get good music quality, because all the hearing aid companies have music programs, and for lack of a better word, they kind of stink. Like you're saying, they don't sound great, but if you take the hearing aid and you program it in specific ways, it can sound much better.
I have a
But
pretty good, I mean, I really have a very highly rated audiologist who's an
Good.
expert in cochlear implant and also very well versed in hearing aids. And he keeps saying this is the best he can do.
Okay.
And as a musician, I have to tell you, it's abysmal. It's
I'm
awful.
sorry to hear that.
One of my great heartbreaks.
Um, so not to get too like tech driven, but there are other technologies that aren't hearing aids. So for one, maybe you would try like Apple AirPods Pro, program them, and because of how it fits in your ear, because of the speakers that they have, they're very different than what hearing aids use, and they're actually designed for music production, where hearing aids are designed to make speech clear, and they're very different components for each of those. So it's possible that, you know, Apple AirPods Pro will generally sound much better for music than a pair of prescription hearing aids, just because they're designed for music and hearing aids are designed for speech. But it's whether they'd be able to provide enough volume for you to also help it one sound good and you be able to hear it.
Yeah, yeah.
We're
I
talking
have
about the,
serious hearing loss.
talking about the headsets.
I doubt that would be helpful.
Mm.
I think those of us with serious hearing loss have the greatest challenge in trying to hear music and it's anywhere near its original form.
Nancy, to your question, I unfortunately don't have them on my desk right now, and I can, I guess, share my screen and just, hang on. Full screen. Hopefully you can hear this or see this Apple AirPods Pro.
So the earpods are put into your ears, not over your ears.
Right.
Okay.
And these work very well. And these are the ones that I mentioned can be programmed loosely as hearing aids. They are nowadays, as of, I think it was last week, they are over-the-counter hearing aids with the software update. But they have little microphones on them that will pick up the sound, transmit it into your ears, and they will sound much better for music sound quality. I mean, you can hear this, HearAdvisor.com if you wanted to look at it and you can compare. You know, we have tested Apple AirPods Pro. You know, you could listen to the sound quality down here on the bottom of streamed music and get a sense of how much better they sound than prescription hearing aids. Just as an example.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So Tony asked, are any of the OTCs programmable either by their app or using an audiologist? So yes, there are quite a few Jabra hearing aids, Jabra GN. If you remember that table I shared or that graphic I shared from Hearing Tracker, so GN is actually owns Resound, which is a major prescription hearing aid company, and then they also own Jabra. So Resound basically rebrands their products, their prescription medically researched hearing aids, as over-the-counter hearing aids. And so they are adjusted by audiologists. And there are a few other ones like through Sam's Club, like Lucid, for example, that are OTC, but you can still have them programmed by providers. But like I said, this is the Wild West of OTC. There is nothing saying that you can't purchase an OTC device from Best Buy or online. Like here's one use case. You have hearing loss, you get a hearing test, you go to like HearAdvisor, you find a device, an OTC device that you like, it's a good price, that has benefit. There's nothing saying you can't go to a provider and have them perform real ear measurements like I do on the mannequin on your own ears. An audiologist should be willing to do that for you.
I think my impression is that some audiologists will do that. Some of them, I think, regard the advent of OTC hearing aids as a sort of a possible source of, line of business that they've never engaged in before. That is to say, to provide support for people, who have devices that they themselves, i.e. the audiologist, did not sell. Some of the audiologists, on the other, I think, regard, OTCs as a threat. Because it does obviously enable people to buy devices without the intervention of an OTC. So yeah, some audiologists will, presumably, be willing to do OTC, real ear measurements on devices that they did not prescribe themselves, including OTCs, and some will not.
And you can always push them. Like, it's unfortunate that you, as the individual with hearing loss, needs to push the provider. And there are many great audiologists out there who are performing real ear measurements and will stop at nothing to get you to hear the best you can. But yeah, as Russ said, you can ask them and let them know. You perform real ear measurements and just pay them for an hour of their time to do those measurements for you. And then you at least know.
That's just not how the economics of their practice is. Their economics are rooted in the sale of prescription hearing aids, and that has to do with their relationships and their affiliations with the hearing aid manufacturers.
Yeah,
So
I agree.
they can to give you prescription hearing aids that they sell you, and they only have some, but not others. So it's not like you can compare over a huge, they will give you a recommendation for you. You don't get to try a bunch of them and decide for yourself. It's just not set up. It's not economic for them.
I agree. And to be fair, like audiologists, and this is one of the reasons why I got out of clinic, because I didn't like the way that I was having to interact with patients where sales were an element. But most audiologists, they just don't have this knowledge. And that's like why I mentioned I recently went to the ADA, their Audacity conference, to hopefully talk to providers and let them know, like, we're doing these measurements so you can see what OTC devices are good, so that you can maybe think of fitting them in clinic for the patients who want maybe a device specific for music or a backup OTC device. Or there were some people at the nonprofit I worked at who couldn't afford $500 for a pair of hearing aids. And like, that's through a grant through the Lions Club, and they still couldn't find the money for like $500. And so like, I completely understand the difficulty from some of those patients that I saw. And I don't know what we can do to really change the field, to your point, where providers, like Nancy, what you said, that providers aren't so tied to sales. They're willing to go beyond the 5 major hearing aid manufacturers. And like you said, they generally don't even work with all 5, which is okay. There aren't big differences between them so long as they're programmed with real ear measurements. Let me see. So there's a few other questions here. Lori asks, and if I miss anyone, feel free to jump in with your question. But Lori said, I have a significant hearing loss in one ear and have met a number of others like me. We really struggle to hear if there is any background noise. Do you have any recommendations?
Can I add one more thing? This is Lori. Sorry. I tried a hearing aid years ago. It was very awkward. I'd like to try one again, but they're having one hearing aid. There's a slight delay. So it does affect processing, if that makes sense. And so the hearing aid at the time wasn't fantastic, but it was also, that was a challenge, that slight delay.
A good analogy is, we have 2 eyes, and those 2 eyes allow us to like gain a sense of depth perception. Right. There's a fun little trick you can do where you cover up one eye and then you have someone stand there with a ball and a cup and you say, okay, tell me where to move my hand to drop the ball in the cup. And if you cover up one eye, you can't do that because you lose that depth perception. Having 2 ears allows us to help differentiate speech from noise. It gives us kind of auditory depth perception. Newer hearing aids.
It helps with direction of sound too. I can't tell where sound is coming from.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's 2 ears. We have 2 microphones on our head. That helps with detecting sound left, right, up, down, front, back, which is all like super fascinating. But then if you have issues hearing, that's like you're saying, going to go out the window. Newer hearing aids should have very, very low latency times. And I mean, I always like to think of hearing aids as like advanced crutches. You know, they're not fixing your hearing, they're not restoring your hearing, they're working with whatever is left of your hearing system. So they're never going to be as good as normal hearing, but with training, because there's a lot of your brain needs to relearn how to hear with this hearing aid. With good programming, they can still offer very, very big benefits. So Lori, how long ago was it that you tried a hearing aid in that 1 year, out of curiosity?
Gosh, it's been a long time, more than
Okay.
10 years, and it was an awkward hearing aid. I needed a separate device that connected with it that kept deprogramming. So I
Okay.
know hearing aids have gotten much better, and I do want to try one. So I was just curious if you had any suggestions.
All the major hearing aid companies, you can purchase like just one device and have it programmed for you. Not to just keep talking about Apple, but it's amazing because it's less than $200. I just looked up. You can actually program Apple AirPods Pro to function as a single device. So see if you have a family member maybe who has a set of Apple AirPods Pro, or go to Costco and buy it, and then you can return it afterwards. But just get a sense of what it sounds like having one of them in your ear. And within the settings on your phone, I know you can adjust it to function as like one earbud by itself.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'd be curious to hear what your thoughts are.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. I think next, Lori Burke asked, has anyone found a hearing aid that is good for music? Any difference between? Yes, so much of hearing aids, prescription hearing aids sounding good for music, comes down to them being programmed right, and then your hearing. So like I said, an audiologist should program them such that your ear is more plugged up, so that you have bass. Bass is extremely important for music sound quality. What hearing aids do to make speech clear needs to be turned off. So compression needs to be reduced. The amplification generally should be pretty flat. Things like feedback reduction. If they hear a flute or a guitar solo, they're going to think it's feedback and try and reduce it. So it really needs to be programmed specifically for music, not just relying on the default music programs. Studies show that those are quite bad, actually. There's specific programming steps that need to be taken. And I'm sorry that I don't have a better answer for you than that. But in the chat here, I'll share a couple links. Let me see. So Etymotic Research is actually a company from my neck of the woods over here in the Chicagoland area. And I'm sharing a link. Etymotic Research, they have various earbuds. They're called Music Pro and Music Pro Elite. They kind of function like hearing aids, but they're designed for music. So they'll actually amplify soft sounds, but then if, someone slams a cymbal, they're going to actually bring that level down. So hopefully it's not as uncomfortable. Another common device for musicians, and I know a few other audiologists who really specialize in music, the music world. There are some in-ear monitors, as they're called, that can be programmed to help with hearing loss as well. And I'll share a link for those. They're a little bit pricier, but they work very well if like if you perform in an orchestra. These can help protect your hearing, but then also provide some volume based on your hearing loss. So there are lots of little technologies like this. But yeah, Burke, and for those of you who are following up, because I see quite a few of you, a lot of it just comes down to having the hearing aid programmed for your needs. But even still, they're not designed for music. They're designed for speech. Walter asked if I just aids for individuals. Unfortunately, I don't anymore because it would just be difficult to do that remotely because we can't perform real ear measurements. Lisa comments, I have an audiologist who always uses real ear. I agree with Vi. I find the music program sounds minimally different, but when I hear my Bose earphones, I found that since I can adjust them to increase bass or treble, it sounds better. Excellent. I mean, that's a win for the like OTC and just consumer technology. It's designed for speech, or I'm sorry, it's designed for music sound quality. So thanks, Lisa. It's great to know.
The Bose Hearphone is discontinued. They shifted to the over-the-counter, and the Bose Hearphone had a much broader range of frequencies, and that's why I could hear better. But now I got volume up at 100 because my hearing loss has worsened so much. So it's not helping me as much as it used to.
I'm sorry to hear that. Let me share one other technology then that I just remembered, which is Audera headphones. You can actually program them based on hearing loss, and then they'll provide gain specific to your needs. And they're designed for music. Lisa commented. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Who programs the Auderas? Is that something you take to your audiologist?
That you could if your audiologist was
Would do that.
willing to help, but there's actually an app that comes with it. I actually have a set of them that actually sitting up there behind me. They're the older version though, but there's an app that you can install and you can do a hearing test and or just plug in your hearing loss.
What are you doing?
It's at Zoom at the hearing aids. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So Lisa commented, I thought OTC hearing aids were for people with mild hearing loss, not those of us with moderately severe or severe. No, you're absolutely right. OTC, what the FDA categorized it as, which is extremely confusing, is a perceived mild to moderate hearing loss. So they didn't even come out and say definitively mild to moderate. They say a perceived mild to moderate.
What does that mean? Perceived.
I think they had to do that because they wanted to be sure, that you could purchase them without an intervention from an audiologist. Now, typically, most people, we always say that people ignore their hearing loss for inordinate amounts of time. It's also the case, I think, that people underestimate their hearing loss substantially. So your perceived mild to moderate hearing loss may actually be it may be a lot worse than that. But, the only way to find out is to test it. And OTCs, of course, were designed to buy them without any testing. So they had almost, just because of what they're trying to do, put in that word perceived.
That's a good point. It's a great point. Do you recommend, Walter asks, do I recommend top providers? I honestly have not been practicing clinically for a couple years. In the Chicagoland area, I could definitely recommend some people. Otherwise, like Hearing Up that I mentioned is a great resource, and I don't think there's any cost to you, hearingup.com. Hearing Tracker would be another great place that you can go because you can go onto their forums and ask questions and hear from other people like yourselves and find like direct word of mouth recommendations to providers. So those would be a couple recommendations. It's something we're trying to change where all providers in school, they learn about real ear measurements, they hear it again and again and again. And then once they get into the real world, unfortunately, for whatever reason, it just kind of drops off. Any other questions? For me, at least? Okay.
If there are other questions, I suggest we get into them, but if not, I mean, we don't have to stay till 4 o'clock. I mean, if we've exhausted the questions, we can stop at this point, but I don't want to do that prematurely.
I wanted to say something for Nancy, because I really like what I heard from Steve about the in-ear mold. And I've had hearing aids for 20 years. And when I asked my audiologist the last time, she said, well, you still have more capacity in your current hearing aid, but the one after this, we will need to make a mold. And she explained the need for it exactly the way Steve described it. And the thought of having something in my ear, will it itch and so forth. She said it will attach to an over the ear, behind the ear, whatever you call that piece, but it will be a mold. And it is the type of hearing aid that the guy who, that really wonderful guy who had been at Gallaudet, he showed us that's what he was wearing. So, as hearing loss progresses, my hearing aids have had to change. I've needed stronger ones with stronger batteries. That's just been a loss that keeps ongoing over time. So what you said, Steve, absolutely was what my wonderful audiologist described.
Good. Thanks for sharing. I will say that my door is always open, by the way. On HearAdvisor, you can send an email to help at HearAdvisor. That just goes to me. So if you ever have questions, feel free, send me an email, or I'm sure I can share my email with Russ, and then he can pass it on to all of you. And I'll share the PDF slides for anyone else. I saw someone asked about the link to the white paper, so I included that as well. But thank you all for giving me some of your time. I know it's the weekend, so it was nice speaking with you all, and I hope what we're doing can help some of you or family members. I know it's kind of limited in as much as we're doing only mild to moderate and not all hearing losses, but we're still young, so maybe over the years we'll be able to expand, test more hearing losses, and cover a broader range.
Well, I mean, I would first of all be remiss if I definitely want to thank Steve. I think this has been terrific. At least that's a personal opinion. I hope other people share it, but I can't say for sure. I thought this was a great presentation. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you to Natalie. The captions are as usual, I think are just terrific. Judy, Vi, anyone else? Any further closing comments or thoughts?
Excuse me, volunteer, volunteer, volunteer. Did everybody hear that? We'd love
I'll
to hear
second
from you.
that. I will certainly second that. And thank you all for coming. And thank you so much, Steve. It was a great program.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, I'll close it. I'll close it now. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.